On today's episode of the Investing Mastermind Podcast, we continue our discussion about the 2026 Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting that happened on May 2nd this year. And unfortunately, I didn't get to go, but Signe did. So we're going to talk about what Signe experienced at the meeting, because as much as there's a lot to learn during the official meeting, where we see now the new CEO, Greg Abel, and his leadership team answering questions from the audience, what's also really key is everything that Signe and other shareholders learned at other meetings at the Berkshire meeting. So with that, Signe, tell us what you learned at some of the other events going on.
Oh my gosh, what did I learn? So I want to say that it was so good. I mean, it's always good, but this time I participated in ValueX at Berkshire, which is Guy Spier's event, and then in Vitaliy Katsenelson's QA session. I also, for the first time, I was with Einar Knudsen, which is a investor from, I believe he's from California, but he's specialized within agriculture. And he apparently, for the last many years, have had this event, and I was invited this time. So a lot of people from the ValueX community was there, as well as some people from William Green's mastermind. And William Green is an author who has this investor mastermind. So those were the events I participated in. Usually there's a brunch on Sunday that's hosted by Markel, and they didn't have a brunch this year. So that kind of left an open spot for Vitaliy Katsenelson to actually move into the Marriott Hotel where he had his QA. That Sunday ending off with an event is so amazing, because you get to say goodbye to all your friends that you know that are there and all those different things. I don't know where to start because it was so good this year. This year, there wasn't as many people in Omaha as in previous years. Like, I remember last year, there were so many people. And the first year we were there, Michelle, where we were there together, was just right after Corona, or actually during the pandemic, kind of still. Country wasn't open for the whole world, where, tourists couldn't come into the United States still. It was smaller the first time we were there, but then after Corona, it was insane, the amount of people. This year, people I know, we just got to connect on that close level again, because there wasn't a whole lot of people. So you really got a lot of time with some of like Guy Spier, Matthew Peterson, Vitaliy Katsenelson, et cetera, because there wasn't many people there. You would meet all these kind of big gurus out and about in the streets and things like that. So that was kind of amazing. The first event I went to was Matthew Peterson's. He has this event on Thursday evening, which is more like a network meeting, but it is still like super interesting and a lot of connection. What they talked a lot about was Matthew. He's kind of divided. He's a fund manager, and he's divided his fund into two different funds. One that's very focused on Warren Buffett style investing, the value stocks, and another fund that's more an options fund, and where they have a book out. So if you guys want to read about how they trade options, you can read that book. I think the fund is called Titan. I'm not actually, I don't remember what the book is called. I do have a copy of it. So you guys can go check that out. And you know about that, right, Michelle?
Yeah.
You know that he's kind of now has these two different paths.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went to ValueX on Friday morning, and it was absolutely amazing. They had Bill Ackman coming, and he did a Q&A, which was, it was so interesting. So he usually at ValueX, the presenters have like 15 minutes to present a topic. And he said, I just want to do a QA. So if you have any questions, ask me anything, which, what a treat. The CEO from the Daily Journal was there talking about Charlie Munger and Mohnish Pabrai. He was actually asked, can you tell us a story that we have not heard about Charlie Munger? So if you want to hear that story, there's actually, ValueX is out there on on YouTube. It's a juicy story. So you can go ahead and listen to it there. Kind of a funny story. The Daily Journal CEO was there, and he told us he almost crashed his car when he got that call from Charlie Munger to see him and talk about the potentially becoming a part of the Daily Journal Corporation.
Wow.
Then, with Bill Ackman, one thing I thought that he said was interesting in terms of where he stands. So he's a fund manager, and he said that he think, or what he can see right now, that all other investment firms, not his, but other investment firms, what they do is they use AI for trading. And that's always, Michael Lewis has written a whole book. I recommend that, try to find it. It's Michael Lewis. It's about trading and about that front loading where they just want to invest as fast as possible. And that's a race too now where they use AI for doing that. So I thought that was interesting that, we're all in this little world thinking about AI, but the investment firms on Wall Street uses this as a part of the race. Chris Bloomstron was there, talked about this change, Berkshire Hathaway, that they're now a CEO in there, but he was talking about how Berkshire has outperformed the S&P 500. Adam Mead was there. So Adam, I have his book right here. You won't be able to read the title because it's opposite way, but it's an update to his previous book. This is the complete financial history of Berkshire Hathaway, the full complete one. And he updated it when Warren Buffett left. And it was actually published during or right before the annual meeting or during the annual meeting. And he was up there showing some really, really cool data from the book. And I mean, if you want to watch ValueX from Berkshire, but don't have the full time to watch, then go look for Adam's talk because it was so interesting. So what he found was that from 2021 to 2025, Berkshire accumulated the same amount of equity than in the past 52 years. So in just a matter of a few years, they accumulated the same amount of equity, and that is compounding at its best, right? That was just a super interesting stat that he threw out there. Well, later that afternoon, I went to Brendan van der Kolk's book release, and I actually also have his book, and I didn't even bring it down here. It's upstairs because I need to read it. He launched a book at the Berkshire meeting too, and had Phil Town, Matthew Peterson come, and where he did an interview with them. And, Phil Town usually don't show up in Omaha, but he actually did this year, which was kind of interesting, right? Because usually he's got horses and they usually have a race at the same time, but he actually came this year, and he's been a mentor for Brendan. New Money is the book, and I haven't read it yet, but I need to read it. I just skimmed through it, and it's, it seems to be a really good beginner's book if you want to know about Warren Buffett style investing. I think it's a good book as far as, when I was flipping through, I was like, okay, this is definitely something I need to read, and we could potentially talk about the book here in the podcast. But it was interesting. So what Phil Town, one of the things he said that they were looking at was software as a service, but where AI wouldn't be able to take over, where it would either be life or death, so that they could not rely 100% on AI because that could mean life or death in software as a service sector, or there would be some legal problem if AI recommended something that wasn't correct. He couldn't say which companies they were looking into because his team was like, no, you can't say that because of the SEC, and he's got his own fund, so he can't recommend anything or say anything about anything. So he was not allowed to say which companies, but he did talk extensively about that's what they were looking into these days, software as a service, SaaS companies, where they can't rely 100% on AI. So because AIs in software as a service are making so many changes to these companies, right? So companies that we thought was kind of safe are now, maybe being taken over by AI, but there are certain things when it's life or death, or potentially where it could create some legal issues where these companies will survive AI, but maybe be traded at a discount because people are so afraid of AI and they don't understand the business.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating topic, and good that was among the topics discussed at these events. So that's really neat to learn all that, and good that you got to rub shoulders with the likes of Guy Spier and Phil Town and Mohnish like usual.
Yeah, it was so nice to, Guy Spier also recently had a whole podcast about that. I'm just so grateful that he had the energy. He did 100% have the energy to host ValueX, and he's got such an amazing team to also help him out. He said also something about, which is something he's got from Warren Buffett, but with a little help from my friends, it was just so incredible. So, I mean, it was great to see him again. I can only say super nice things about him. On Saturday, most of the day was the meeting. And then after I went, Einar Knudsen, who's an agriculture investor, has his own fund. And he has been hosting this event, but it's the first time I've participated. And I met him, I was introduced to him at the Berkshire annual meeting, and he's of Danish descent, which kind of bonded over. It was super interesting. So it was where different investors, bloggers within finance came up and pitched companies or talked about, specific areas. And it was kind of interesting because some of these people were definitely value investors and not Buffett style investors. So value investors are people that as long as a company is cheap, they will buy it, and then they hope that it's going to increase in price over time. So there was definitely a few value investors there, and it was kind of interesting to be a part of a meeting with, where it would not be companies that I would risk my money investing in, because I only want to invest in quality. It's like rule number 1, don't lose money. Rule number 2, never forget rule number 1. And with value investing, there's other rules, right? So they want to buy cheap. The idea is that then the stock is going to increase over time because it's traded cheap. So that was small cap company, but super interesting, to be a part of pitch like that, and had some good discussions about pharma, because Denmark is a big pharma, and there was somebody talking about pharma, and we had a great discussion. It was great to be a part of that meeting. Great people there. I mean, what I really like about Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting is that everybody is kind of, there for one purpose and discussing and talking. And I mean, what I love about the Berkshire Hathaway is also, it's not about networking and how's the weather and how are your kids and family. I mean, I love talking about that stuff too, but I had the most nerdy discussions with one of my very close friends at Matthew's soiree event on Friday or on Thursday evening about systems. So we were nerding totally out in a discussion about systems and companies that were using systems. And I mean, I love that. So just being able to actually talk to people, learn stuff, and maybe contribute yourself with your own knowledge. So that was awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then the last event was on Sunday, Vitaliy Katsenelson's Q&A. I got to ask a question. I mean, his son had already said, we're done with the questions, it's over, and it was my turn. And then Vitaliy Katsenelson was like, okay, there's only a few people in line. Let's take those questions and then end it off. What I really like about Vitaliy Katsenelson, and maybe I should have started with that, because his Q&A session is awesome. And sometimes he's been publishing his Q&A sessions on YouTube. So you can maybe find some from previous years. I don't think he's recorded all of them, but I think last year he did. I do have the recording. I don't know if you need to subscribe to his newsletter to get it, but it's so great. He is like listening to a young Buffett with the way he answers the question. He gives so much good context. And also with Warren Buffett, he couldn't say anything towards the end because the newspapers would always kind of misinterpret what he said, or he had to be so careful he didn't say anything that would create any type of mania or panic or anything. So he barely could say anything. And that's where Vitaliy Katsenelson, he can still say whatever. So if he releases the recording from his QA session, I encourage you, because he is great. So what he said is that we're in a sideways market right now. He wrote a book about sideways market. So one of the participants that's been following him a lot went up and asked, are we in a sideways market right now? And he did confirm that. I'm sure if you're a little interested in the stock market, you have also noticed that, it is kind of in more sideways. It's not as bullish. It's been in recent years. It's more, up and down. So he confirmed that we are in a sideways market right now. At every Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting, there's a lot of people that are always talking about that the stock market will most likely go down in the future. And it is the nature of the type of investors we are. We always kind of hope to be able to scoop up some wonderful businesses at a discount. So of course, you're going to hear a lot of people talk about that. But I want to say this year, there's some things that maybe we could talk about that in that episode. What is it people are afraid of that's going on right now? That we could discuss in a future episode, right? What is it that they are concerned about right now? Even people that are usually optimistic about the stock market was kind of like, yeah, I don't know how optimistic I am. So that was interesting. He also actually said that right now, people should be happy. He said the stock market, the traders, the speculators, even the investors, were always chasing the highest return. And he said, right now, you should be happy just having a return. So if you have a return right now, congratulations, a positive return. He's like, that's good, because that's what we need to, he said, that's what we need to focus on right now, is just the fact that congratulations, you are actually having a return. So that's something we'll have to get used to for a while, is that it might not be the big returns and just being happy that, to get a return. There were some great questions there at Vitaliy Katsenelson's. I do hope they're going to release it. My own question was, last year, he mentioned that 60% of his fund is invested outside United States. And I asked him for some more context, but it was like super short question. Yes, they are still primarily invested outside of the United States. And again, they were wrapping up. So unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot of context. I would have loved to hear more about his mind, why he's investing outside of the United States, where and how come he's doing it. But yeah, it was kind of quick. He was also asked, so he wrote a book about exiting stocks. He actually has changed a bit of an approach since he wrote about that. So he might be writing a new book about exiting stocks, because he's more long-term now that he was earlier. I could go on and on about Vitaliy Katsenelson's, but I really encourage, if he already did it, we can link to it in the show notes, but I haven't seen anything yet.
That's all good. Well, thank you, Signe, for sharing these insights. These are incredible investors, and I'm glad you got to spend time with them.
Yeah, and again, like I mentioned earlier, there was actually more time to spend with people this year than there's been in recent years. Like, there's been so many people you haven't been able to get really close and have conversations. You were interrupted all the time. It is nice to see people and get interrupted by people you only see that one time a year and stuff like that. But this time it wasn't as bad. So you could actually have conversations with people, which was really, really nice, to be able to talk and have a deep conversation without being interrupted all the time by someone who needed an autograph or whatever. So
Right.
not from me. But it is fun to always meet someone who is listening to the podcast and recognizes me. And I'm like, not sure where I know you from. And it's because they've been listening to the podcast or watching it on YouTube. So that is awesome. Okay. So I think it's time to wrap up here. I've been talking for 20 minutes, if not more now. And
well,
I do hope it was interesting.
Yeah, I'm really grateful you shared what you experienced there. And I think that it goes a long way. To your point, it's even a better environment to connect with some of these really great investors. So I'm glad you got to make the most of that. So even though the overall attendance might be less, but you have more intimate quality time with people. And that's just like what we like to do with businesses. We want to invest in quality businesses. So I'm glad you had a quality time.
Thank you so much, Michelle. All right. Well, we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Till next time.
If you enjoyed the show and found the content informational, we would be super grateful if you would leave us a review and follow us wherever you get your podcasts, so you automatically get new episodes in your feed.
The contents of the Investing Mastermind podcast are for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. None of this is investing advice, and if you need help in your personal situation, please consult with a professional.